Before we close, we want to give all of our women some closing remarks. So please.
This is home. This is South Carolina, right? And so I'm a history teacher. I teach government, but I do history too. So I want to remind you of our history in this state. So a couple of days ago, I was going through my stuff, and I found an old blog that I wrote for Linda Kettner in 2008. And she had asked me to write something for her, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote it. And it was so full of so much hope and optimism, and it was beautiful. And it wasn't beautiful because I wrote it. It was just beautiful because of the time period. And it was about what I wanted to see after the election, which in 2008 happened to be November the 4th, 2008, right? So fast forward, it was 2016. Just knew Hillary was going to win. Watching the returns, and I watch it by myself because I don't get home late on election night till about midnight. So that's my ex-husband's birthday, so he keeps the kids that week because he knows I'm not home. So I was by myself in my apartment. I went and got the cheapest apartment I could find while I was building a house, and the walls were really thin. And so I'm watching these returns come back, and battleground state after battleground state, and it was very sad. But it was sad for me, but I had some Hispanic neighbors upstairs, and the walls were thin, so I heard things I probably shouldn't have heard, right? I heard my neighbor crying profusely and talking to her husband about their future. It was not something I should have heard, but I still think about it all the time. So, gather myself, go to work the next day, pick up my son from school. My son was 13 at the time. He does this political thing. He's around me all the time. And he looks at me and says, am I going to have to leave the country? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know better. I've taught you better than this. And he goes, I heard some of my classmates say to my teacher, our Spanish teacher, that Trump was elected and they're sending her back. That was the first experience he had had like that. And so I felt like I had let a lot of people down in 2016, right? I felt that. I felt like my neighbors who didn't know what was going to happen, my son who lives in my house, questioning his right to be in the country he was born in. And so I promised myself, look, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of resources, but I have some courage. And with that courage, I was going to use it to make sure that I never woke up and had another moment like that ever again. And so South Carolina, I know right now, we've been here before. This isn't our first rodeo where people told us our dreams were fairy tales or where people told us this was impossible. But in 2008, when Barack Obama stood on the stage after New Hampshire and talked about a little girl from Dillon, he was talking about me. And so that galvanized a small rural community. And when he talked about Greenwood and he talked about Edith Childs, we learned that anything is possible. So I'm going to ask all of you today to, even though people are erasing us, to people who are saying our candidate shouldn't be on stage, the people who are saying she's down in the polls, you have the courage to vote anyway, donate anyway, show up anyway, find a neighbor anyway, go to church anyway, stand up for Kamala anyway, and on February the 29th,